We're going to go to Steve in Oklahoma, and hopefully we can get through this pretty quick. Steve says that the God exists in the realm of things that are not to be demonstrated. Maybe if you and Armin want to have a conversation on this, since I kind of hogged up a bit of space there.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi.
How's it going?
Yeah. Going pretty good. So I just kind of wanted to just kind of make a little, just like, I guess a thought kind of experiment, so to say, because I feel as though atheists a lot of the times talk about things that, have to be demonstrated. And I feel as though it's kind of like a materialism kind of form of philosophy to where it's like everything in this world that is this world is, is there. It's materialistic and we can feel it and things like that. But I just feel as though things aren't necessarily like that when it comes to this world, and things like, the double slit experiment and different little things in quantum mechanics kind of show that like the world isn't necessarily just cut and dry. This is exactly how it is, and we can demonstrate everything that we know and can believe. I feel as though certain things like, the brain waves and how like the brain works and how other things that we can't necessarily explain, not saying that we can't explain in the future, doesn't necessarily point to everything being completely cut and dry, demonstrable. This is exactly how it is. I feel as though, when it comes to like experiences with God that people have, or experiences with some sort of supernatural thing or something along those lines, it's kind of coming from that realm, so to say, of things that are not necessarily demonstrable, things that are not necessarily, we can throw it in a lab, we can get results that we want, so everyone can come to a consensus to agree that this is exactly how things are. I feel as though, there's just certain things about life, and I feel as though this reality to where it's just like not everything is cut and dry demonstrable, and that's kind of where maybe God can be in that undemonstrable realm, I suppose.
So what you're talking about has a name. It's called the God of the Gaps. But have you heard of that before, the God of the Gaps?
Yeah, God of the Gaps argument. It's a very
yeah. Okay, so good. So all the examples that you mentioned, they all have been and can be easily explained within the immaterial world. You agree with that? Like the brain waves, the double slit experiment, like none of that has anything within them that contradicts everything being material. Do you agree with that?
Not necessarily, not 100%.
The brain waves and the double slit experiment, they all are completely like the theories about that we have that explains what's happening there. They're completely within the material world, and we have really good explanations for what's happening there. None of them require a supernatural element. None of them require anything beyond our understanding of how the material world works.
Well, I feel, things like the double slit experiment, to where it's like when we observe these atoms going through the gun, they kind of, they can kind of differ, from whether it's going to be a wave or it's going to be a particle sometimes. So
yeah, but that doesn't contradict. But that doesn't. Okay, but all that experiment shows is that the material world, the things that make the material world, sometimes act like particles and sometimes they act like waves. But that's still within our understanding of the material world. There's no contradiction between that and our understanding of the material world.
What's the contradiction?
What's the contradiction? Yeah. And also brainwaves. Brainwaves are complete.
Because I had kind of cut out for a second, Steve. Are you on like the observer effect? Is that where you're at, or I just want to make sure I'm tracking from where I was left out?
No, I was just talking about how things in this world aren't always necessarily cut and dry, demonstrable, and we.
Yeah, I heard it. Yeah, I heard of that.
Know exactly how.
So there's two. Yeah. So Steve, there's two parts of your argument, and they both have a problem. First of all, the examples that you gave are not good examples to show that are the theories that are based on our understanding of the world being material fails to explain. Like if you wanted to come up with another thing that we failed at explaining with our material understanding of the world, these were not the good examples that you could have come up with. But even if you had good examples, our lack of understanding of how these things work does not at all add any value to the God argument. So it fails in two parts. First of all, your examples do not contradict a completely material world, but even if you had one that we couldn't explain, it doesn't at all add to. You say so at the beginning. You say God could be there. Okay, yeah. So I don't know. My penguin deity, or I don't know what. I could shove anything else in there I want
spiritual
as well.
farts.
I have yes, or no. You know what? I'm gonna actually this is a good one. I have a penguin that eats every god that it sees it eats. And wherever gap you want to fill your god with, I could also fill my penguin in those gaps, and it eats the gods that the gods live in those gaps, right? So, and I can that my penguin could be real. There's no way that you could prove that my penguin that I just introduced to you doesn't exist. And just because it could exist, and it could exist within those gaps that we don't understand, because all you're saying that we need for us to accept a claim is the fact that it could exist, and our scientific understanding of the world is not completely capable of understanding everything, which includes my God-eating penguin. So as much as your God could be real, my God-eating penguin could also be real. And if they could both be real, then your God is dead, because it just swallowed your God.
It's a self-defeating position, Steve, because when you just say it could be, and you're like, it's not cut and dry, then there seems to be what's called an underdetermination problem that which is what Armin just did. He rivaled another hypothesis that explains all the data, and there's no one is winning that battle. And we should just probably discard these extremely ad hoc ways of reasoning, right? We probably just discard that. It seems self-defeating because you should, by your own lights, be open to the fact that it's just as possible that it's confirmation of materialism, right? So it just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, what I'm trying to necessarily more point out. Oh, are you? I'm sorry. You're trying to say something?
No, I was just saying I like how people in the live chat started worshiping my penguin, but go on.
We have that power to create gods.
Yeah. Power, the penguin power. No, but I was just more saying is that people have had experiences with, some sort of supernatural realm or some sort of God, and some certain aspect or some sort of capacity. And it feels as though, like I said, just going back to things not necessarily being demonstrated, these experiences that people have had, and not just one experience, multiple experiences, sometimes, multiple people in the room having an experience with God, something like that. It feels as though things like that can't necessarily be demonstrated. Just like going back to the atoms and the double slit experiment, we can't necessarily 100% say it's waves or it's particles, because when we observe them, they change. So it's kind of like, okay, how do we necessarily finitely cut and dry? Okay, it's particles and waves. But we can't.
Steve, I'm kind of concerned. Steve, real quick, I'm kind of concerned because, one, I don't really feel comfortable talking in this realm because I'm not a quantum physicist. Armin, are you a quantum physicist?
Probably. I don't think so.
Yeah. See, Steve, are you a quantum physicist?
Well, it's kind of an argument from authority fallacies where,
no, it's not an argument from authority. No, I'm not. No. I didn't say. It wasn't. It would be an argument from. It'd be an argument from authority if I said, here's Sean Carroll. Everything he says is true because he's an authority in quantum, well, not really quantum mechanics, but if I took somebody and just said, boom, he's an expert in quantum mechanics, boom. So that's not what I did, right? What I was saying is pointing out the landscape that none of us are quantum physicists. And then I was going to ask, how extensive is your knowledge in classical mechanics? Probably not huge, right? And so I don't really know, it just sounds like hubris. It sounds like what astrologers do with crystals and stuff and trying to jump into this realm where there's nothing in the mathematics or predictive expectations that say anything like what you're saying. So like all I can see this is you bastardizing a science for the sake of like your own cognitive, like, I don't know, pleasure or something, or like what helps you feel better about the proposition. But like, I feel like it's wrong for me to feel like you have like the space to speak here, because we clearly don't, right?
But Steve, let's, without going into specifics of science, because we're not qualified to do that here, let's agree that science can't explain everything. I mean, hasn't explained everything. Okay, that's what you're trying to get at, right? One of those things might be including, I don't know, how and why the Big Bang started. We don't know that. Do you agree with that, Steve? We don't know exactly why, or if it's even right to ask a why.
I think we lost Steve.
Yeah. Oh,
unfortunately, we lost Steve. Yeah, make your point, Armin. And
okay.
yeah.
So yeah, if you could listen to this later. So given that we don't know that, I could come up with this hypothesis and say that there's a giant turtle in a parallel universe, and it farts, and every time it farts, the butthole of this turtle starts opening into a new universe, and it's the beginning of a universe. So the Big Bang that we experience in this universe was basically a gateway to the butthole of this giant turtle in another parallel universe, and that the Big Bang itself was a fart. And
how do I join this religion?
If I say no, but if I put this claim out there and you say, well, how do you know this, Armin? I'm like, and I tell you, well, science can't explain everything. It doesn't have an explanation for exactly how Big Bang started. So given that we don't know exactly where Big Bang came from, this could be an explanation. Then that's the argument that you have for God. Would you buy my explanation, given that science fails to explain everything to us, fails right now to tell us exactly where Big Bang started? Would you buy that?
Yeah, right. No, I mean, you shouldn't, right? Because well, like I think you said at the beginning, it just turns out to be an argument from ignorance. But in this case, like, I worry about whether or not it's an argument from personal incredulity, that like I can't imagine it being this thing, and so therefore it's not. And so I think you're falling in this weird gray area between those two. I think the key point is, I think it's just a fallacious way to get to the conclusion that you're trying to get to, and so there's more work to be done. I mean, and that's one thing is important, is like, even when you identify these issues, it's not like Armin's going to say like, therefore your position's wrong. I mean, Armin's going to carry the dialectic open and say, let me just give me more. It's just that when it turns out we do this, they end up not being like, they're never forthcoming, and that's kind of the problem. But you do get like people like Nick on the show call and ask great questions, and we can get each other's perspective, and we can try to move towards truth in some way that's different than some other calls where it's a little bit more combative. But I think, Armin, veggies are good, right? So like boring conversations. But candy is also really good too. These like really heated back and forth. But you can't just always have candy. You can't always have veggies. So you kind of need the candy and the veggies, to kind of go with each other. So